Welcome everyone here this morning. Glad you're here with us. Welcome to you visitors. Hope you can feel at home here. And above all, that God would be honored and glorified. The God who is ever the same. He has promised, he has spoken, it's still the same. Is death losing its grip on you? I had to think about that. It's not a once and done thing, is it? Those chains need to keep on falling off. Those grip of death just after us needs to just keep falling off. So, but I'm glad there's a God this morning. It's merciful, a God that provides salvation, a God that gives us hope. Because without that, I wouldn't have anything worth sharing for you this morning. What's the hardest thing you've ever done? I don't know, if somebody wants to respond, you may. It's the hardest thing, or one of the hardest things you've ever done. Debbie. Watching your son walk away from God. Maybe somebody else wants to share it. What's the hardest thing you've ever done?
First thing that comes to my mind is something not the same line, and that is realizing that children have to make that personal choice, and I can't do that for them. I have to let go. I have to let that away.
Anybody else? Well, what I was thinking about is probably the hardest thing, and I'm not done with it. That's being a husband, being a dad. It's something that, I don't know, if in a sense that you don't prepare for, and then all of a sudden you're there. And it's sink or swim, pretty much, right? Being a husband, being a dad, and it can be very difficult. Be very taxing, very hard, on pretty much all levels of life, right? Financially, emotionally, spiritually, it can be very tough. So that's a little bit where my mind is going this morning. I assume everybody knows it's Father's Day, so thank you to my family. They didn't let me forget that it is Father's Day. And so that's where my mind has been going, in a sense, a lot of different directions about being a dad. And I'll try to pull some of that together. And I really don't feel like I should be the one up here talking about being a dad, because there's others here like Mike that are past that stage as far as having children in his home. And he could talk from the experience of what has worked and what hasn't worked. But I'll share some of my thoughts this morning. I don't really feel like I have answers. What I want to do is stimulate your thinking, hopefully, on some of the things that I've been thinking about, and you may not necessarily come out at the same conclusion that I have, but hopefully it can challenge us as dads and moms, because as a dad, we can't do this by ourselves. We need a helpmeet to walk alongside, to back us up, to be there. We need young people. We need their inspiration. We need their vision. We need their help in our homes. And so it's something that specifically to the dads, I guess, in a sense, but I hope that everybody can be inspired. I want to share just a few statistics in general, first of all, for you. And these are just off of internet, so, as true as everything is off of there, I guess. I didn't necessarily take a lot of time to figure out exactly the dates on all of this information, but you have it at your fingertips. You can go look it up. Estimated 72.2 million fathers in the United States, just in the U.S., 72.2 million fathers. 33% of all children live in a home without their birth father. So that's assuming there's a father in the home, but 33% of children don't have their birth father in the home with them. "72.2% of Americans think an absent father in the household is the most important problem facing American families. In 1960, only 9.1% of children were living with a single parent. By 2012, the number had risen to 20.7% of all children. The percentage of children without a father in the U.S. is 43%. That's just a blanket statement. It doesn't say why they're without a father. There could be lots of reasons. But 43% of children in the U.S. alone are without a father. That's just phenomenally astounding. 43%. In the U.S., 90% of runaway and homeless children are from fatherless homes. 70% of minors housed in state facilities are from fatherless homes, and that was a 1988 statistic. My guess, probably higher today. 39% of inmates housed in jail are from homes with an absent father. Again, that's from 2002, so again, I would assume it's probably higher. And there's just lists, fact after fact. When the father's missing, it affects the education of the child, it affects the health of the child, physical health, it affects economics of the child. So I want to take you to a verse in Ezekiel. And hopefully you don't feel like I pull these out of context too much. But in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 22, God came to Ezekiel with a message, and he said, "Son of man," Ezekiel 22, I'm in verse 23, "the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto her," the violation that the priests were doing, the terrible things that were going on there by the religious leaders of the day. But what I want to pick out is he gets to verse 30 and he says this, and this is God. He says, "I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge," or you could say that could build a wall and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it. But I found none. Therefore have I poured out mine indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed upon their heads, saith the Lord God. This morning I want to talk about a wall, a gap, and a watchman. After giving you those statistics of the situation in America, the question is, are you as dads going to build a wall? Are you going to stand in the gap for your family, for the children that God has given to you, and possibly for other children as well? Picture a wall. If you need to, picture a wall here, the doorway. There's a gap. Something can get in and out of that gap, right? And so the call that God had here was, he said, I have a problem. There's a gap. And I need somebody to stand in that gap to regulate the flow of what's going in and out of that door. So if I stand in this doorway over here, whatever's behind me in the room is going to have to somehow get past me to come out. If you want in that room, you're going to have to deal with me first. So in our homes, as a dad, are you going to be in the gap? Are you going to build a wall around your family and stand in the gap so that the family behind you is protected? And whatever family is behind you has to deal with dad as the leader in the gap, who is between them and whatever's out here. That was the call that God had to the spiritual people in Israel. And he said, I couldn't find anybody to be that man. The question is, what kind of man am I being for my family today? In America, 43% of children don't have a man to stand in the gap, to be that protection. See, God has created, there's so many facets of this that I hope I'm not bouncing too much. But God has created men and women with specific roles. The man is to be the leader. He's to be a protector. He is to be a safety net for his family. Am I going to step into that role? Am I going to build that wall? Am I going to stand in the gap? Or are my children going to be part of that 43% that don't have a father? 43% don't have a father. Some of the rest have a father that's non-existent because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Or he's there and he's counterproductive because he's abusive. Listen, this church will be no stronger than the families that make it up. And the families in this church will be no stronger than the husbands and fathers that lead them. And to my family especially, and to all of you, I'm going to say I'm sorry for when I have not built the wall and I have not stood in the gap like a real man. I'm sorry for the times when I built a wall and I stood in the gap, but I've done it aggressively or angrily or impatiently. Because when it's done that way, it's counterproductive. And all it does is causes pain and hurt. And that's not what God is calling for. He is calling for a man to stand in the gap, to provide security and protection and leadership for the family, to be a watchman. And I want to take you now to Ezekiel 33. And again, this passage isn't about fathers, but it spoke to me when I read it. Ezekiel 33 and verse 1. Again the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, When I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man of their coasts, and set him for their watchman, if when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet, and warn the people, then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet, and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet, and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come, and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth, and warn them from me. When I say unto the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die. If thou dost not speak to warn the wicked from his way, that wicked man shall die in his iniquity. But his blood will I require at thine hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the wicked of his way to turn from it, if he do not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. So we have the idea of the watchman here. So I think it's pretty easy to understand a watchman, especially back in the old days. We don't have this as much now, but they lived in a city with a wall around it. And the watchman was on the wall watching for danger, watching for the enemy. And of course, imagine that you're the watchman. You're up there on the wall, and you see movement out there. Well, you're immediately going to lock in on that movement and go, what's going on? What is it? Is it somebody coming friendly or not? You have to discern that because you're the watchman on the wall. If it's an enemy coming, and you don't warn them, well, you're going to cause destruction to a lot of people in the city, right? If you're the watchman and you discern that it's danger, and you blow the trumpet, you blow the warning and say, hey, the enemy's coming, you're potentially going to save a lot of people, right? So your job as the watchman is to be on the wall of the city watching. And when you see the danger, you sound the warning and say, danger is approaching. We've got a problem. Well, is it your job to save everybody in the city now? No. Your job is to sound the warning. What the people do in the city is up to them. If they choose to disregard your warning and the enemy comes in and kills them, from what I understand in this passage, the watchman was not held accountable. He did his job. He gave the warning. He said the enemy's coming. These people chose not to take the warning. It's their problem. They brought it on themselves because they did not heed the warning. If the watchman sees the danger, though, and he doesn't warn the people, guess who's responsible? The watchman himself will be held accountable because he did not warn the people. Is it hard to see the connection? I'm the watchman for my family. I've got to build a wall. I've got to stand in the gap, in the gate, and I've got to warn my family of any danger that's coming. If I do not warn my family, my children, my wife, Guess who's responsible? I am. I will be held accountable for every soul in my household that perishes without a warning. If I sound the warning and I do my best to be that leader that God has created me to be, and I sound the warning, then I've done my job. As Stephen said earlier, and it was alluded to in what Debbie said too, we cannot make the choice for our children. All we can do is sound the warning, build the wall, stand in the gap. But if they run us over going out of that gap, there's nothing we can do, is there? But if we've sounded the warning, we at least have that comfort that we've done the job. I've never been there. I don't know how much comfort that is. But that's what God calls me to be as a dad, to sound the warning. Because I'm responsible. To be an effective watchman, I have to be alert. I have to be aware of the enemy. I have to be aware of what kind of danger might come. I have to be willing to actually sound the alarm. I have to recognize that I am accountable for the safety of those that God has entrusted to me. And part of the problem for me in thinking about some of this is it's so easy to have the head knowledge. To stand up here and say that, hey, need to be a real man, need to stand in the gap, need to sound the warning. How does it play out in real life? How hard is it to actually do that? To be that every day, what your children need, what your wife needs. And so what I want to do for just a little bit now is I want to think about some of the specific dangers that as dads we need to be aware of, I believe. We need to be sounding the warning to our family. We need to be building a wall. And I don't know about you, but that can be a little bit, I don't know what the word is, but make you feel a little bit like, oh, really? I got to put up boundaries? I got to build walls? We don't like that because it feels like, well, now I'm restricting them. Why would I want to do that? The fact is, if you really care about yourself, first of all, do you put boundaries in your own life? Well, if you really care and you're really serious about following God, you will. And if you really care about your family and you really care, you're going to build a boundary because you're going to recognize if I do not put a boundary here, if I do not put a wall here and stand in this gap, my children will just freely wander out. It's sort of like a cliff. I mean, if you know the edge of the cliff is here and somebody's walking directly this way, are you going to stand over here and just go, too bad for you. You don't know there's a cliff up there. Probably not. You're probably going to try to get that person's attention. Now, a fence won't fix the problem necessarily. You can build a fence here. A person can climb over fences, can climb over walls. I recognize that fact. But we still have to do something. And in our families, as a dad, it's my responsibility to do something. To put that something there to warn them, this is dangerous. I think more than ever, maybe not more than ever, I think Satan's out to destroy the family. Because if he can destroy the family, he pretty much has the whole country, doesn't he? Look at America. I think he does that. And also, just remember this in general. If God has created something good, guess what Satan wants to do with it? Destroy it, make it not good, because Satan is diametrically opposed to anything that God is. He is the exact opposite, isn't he? And so anything good that God has created, Satan wants to bring chaos and get rid of it. So God has created marriage and the family as something good. I heard about that a little bit last Sunday, as the type of Christ in the church. Satan wants to blow that apart so that he can get his hands on a lot of people. And again, you think about it. When there's a family that's a close-knit unit serving God, you can pick them out every time, right? Usually can. It's something that God has created that's good, that speaks loudly. When there's a dad that's doing his job the way God created him, there's a mom that's his helpmeet, there's children that are happy and content and protected, it speaks loudly because God created it that way to be good. Satan is out to ruin that. So at the foundation, that's a danger. Remember, Satan wants to screw it up. He just does. Here's some other things. The meaning of marriage. And I think we all are aware of the general feeling in the world towards a lot of these things. The meaning of marriage, we've got to be aware of that. Satan's out to take that down, to destroy marriages and what marriage really is. We have to be aware of the danger against the value of children. Again, in so many countries around the world, children are not valued. Countries have put things in place in the past to try not to have so many children in the country. And guess what's happening now? They're running out of people. And they're projecting that some of these countries down the line, in a sense, are going to run out of people. It's not the way God created it. We have to recognize this as dads and leaders. We must value the children that God gives to us. I already talked about the roles of men and women. God has created men and women in specific roles. Not one better than the other, just simply different roles. And we need to understand that as dads. We need to understand that the world we live in is working against those God-given roles to make men less manly and women less womanly and confuse it and mix it all up. Listen, there's men and there's women, and that's it. All right? That is a danger we face, and we've got to teach our children, this is what you are, this is the way God created you, and there's beauty in that, and you live to the fullest in that capacity that God has created you to be. Whether it's a man, then you be the best, strongest, manly man that you ever can be, and if you're a woman, you be the best feminine woman that you can be, because that is how God created you. It is not their choice. It's not. God is the creator. He creates men and women, male and female, and that's it. And that's a danger in our world that we have to recognize, and we have to stand in the gap and protect our children. The sanctity and value of life just blends right into all of this. The purity of our children, we have to protect that. Purity in dating, courtship. Some of this, again, we come out at different places, but I want you to think about it, okay? Think about it. Can you really protect your children too much? I don't have an answer for that, but growing up, I saw families that super protective. Kind of made fun of them. And there's probably an excess to a degree. But now as a dad, and I look back, yeah, it's still, some of it was very unique the way it was done. But can you really protect your children too much? Listen, the Bible says evil communications corrupt good manners. It only goes one way. We're called to be the light of the world, but we're not called to just intermingle. We're to be in the world, but not of the world. And I can't explain all of this. And again, I don't have answers, but I want you to think about it. If you go, well, it's not going to hurt. We're just going to be out here. Listen, evil communications corrupt good manners. It always goes downhill unless you are super deliberate, super careful, and you build a wall and stand in the gap. See, I think the problem, at least for me, is that some of this stuff, it feels old-fashioned. It feels goody-goody-ish, if I can use the term. You feel like you're being too pious, too whatever. Listen, it's a life or death matter. Jesus says, you love me with all of your heart, soul, strength, and mind. You do not look back. It's that serious, because what I choose today, what I teach my children, affects their choices. We're dealing with eternal souls, mine and theirs. And so we have to recognize how serious this is, and somehow, at least for me, we don't want to take life that seriously. And I think part of it is it's because then it means I have to make hard choices. I have to make difficult choices, and I have to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. I want you to think about something. In so many of these areas of our lives, in the way we think about family, the way we think about marriage, the way we think about purity of our children and courtship practices, so many of these areas of life, do we simply take the world's way and try to Christianize it? Or do we take the Bible way, God's way, and work from there? Think about Christendom in general. I think what we've done is we've taken the world and we've said, okay, well, they do that, let's tweak it and do this. Listen, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not God's way. He's told us His way. It's right here. We've got to go back. What does it say? We have to start from the other direction. We can't start here in the world and say, well, now let's go this way and make it Christian. No. We start over here in Jesus Christ, and we live this out. And there's a distinct line between the two. Jesus said, come out from among them and be separate. But He didn't just say be separate. He said, you be conformed to my image. We don't look over here and worry about what they're doing, in the sense that we don't look to them and say, well, they're doing this, so I'm going to do this. No, we look at Jesus Christ and we say, I'm going to do this. This is what He's calling me to do. And guess what? When you look over here, it's going to be different, because Jesus Christ has an entirely different foundation than over here. This doesn't have a foundation. Jesus Christ does. And we've got to start over here and stop starting over here and working this way. We've got to start here, and we don't even work this way. We work this way. We have to understand, again, that Satan is out in every way he can to get us. And again, he uses every way he can, and especially the ways that seem so small, so insignificant, so, does it really matter? It does, because he's out to condition your mind. Social media, games, movies, music. He has used all of them to get inroads into people's believers' hearts. And you know what he's doing? What he's trying to do is he's trying to take your focus off of Jesus and over here. Because once he gets your focus shifted, he's got you. And just let your mind go on that. Social media. The unrealistic picture of marriages and homes that is portrayed. I mean, it happened to me this week. Dealing with some stuff, just, life. And then you see this person, in their marriage, they're so happy. They just went on this vacation and just, it was just wonderful. And it irritated me. It did. I'm just being honest. It irritated me. Because the feeling you get is, they just have they've got the money, they've got the wonderful relationship, all of this. Just go on vacation. That's not life. Great for them. In my heart, I have to deal with that and go, hey, good for them. They got to go on vacation. They probably needed it. Hope they had a good time, right? But it gives an unrealistic portrait of their marriage. I'm sure they have some struggles. We all do. But that's my warning. Satan uses that to wear us down, to add to the stress of life. See, I was already dealing with some stress and some things, and he used that to make me even more discouraged where I was in life. And see, if I'd get off of Facebook, then I wouldn't have to know that stuff, right? All right, that's why I'm saying you think. I have to take this and apply it in my own life. You take it, you apply it in your own life. It's going to be a little different than me. Games, music, movies. Again, stop and think. What is being portrayed in what you're looking at, what you're playing, what you're listening to? What kind of thoughts, what direction is it taking you? Some is obvious, it's out here. Then you've got some that's in here. And Satan's got enough good in it to make us, that feels pretty good. We like that pretty well. But do you know what he's doing? He's conditioning your mind. How do you think we got in America to the place where men marrying men is just okay and killing babies is just okay? How did we get to that point in America? Little stuff at a time. Little influences that Satan worked in there, and people start conditions the Christians through these little things. And that looks pretty harmless. We suck it in and we take it. We don't stop and think. Listen, as a dad, are you standing in the gap? Are you really going to stop and think? Are you going to analyze your actions in all of these areas of life? We have to believe, and this is another danger that we have to be aware of. We've got to keep believing the Bible is the Word of God. It's absolutely correct, it's absolutely true, and it has the answers. Satan wants to provide a lot of other answers from good sources. Not going to discount that. We can get good help from other places. A lot of the thoughts that I'm sharing this morning have been stimulated by other people and books. But the ultimate fact is this is the answer, and it's got to be the foundation. Here's another danger. I'm still thinking on this one, but I think it's a danger. How much activity outside of our family do our children need to find satisfaction? Am I really, as a dad, building the wall, standing in the gap, being the watchman, providing what they need so that they feel secure, they feel confident and satisfied, or do they really need to go here and go there and do this and do that and be with this friends and these friends? And I don't know. That's a tough one for me. But I think it's a danger that we again, in America, and this is another danger, I'm going to tie this in. Satan is out to take the family, mom and dad and children, and then he goes, okay, children, you go over here, parents, you go over here. And you think about, again, he does this in so many areas. And there to this, it's in schooling. Mom and dad are here. Oh, just go over here to the school. Go, go. And the parents, they're not involved in their education. And dad and children as a unit. Are we giving our children what they need, or do they look outside? Now, children need interaction. I'm not discounting that fact, okay? I'm presenting a danger I want you to think about, that I think we've become so conditioned to the fact that our children just need to be out here always doing something with somebody else. Maybe the problem is that as dad, I'm not willing to get down there on the floor and play a game with them. I'm not willing to go out and play in the yard with them. It's too hot. You know what? A little sweat probably isn't going to hurt me. I'm putting time. Somebody told me once, so many things in children's life, love especially, is spelled T-I-M-E. It's spelled time. And that's tough. But you think about that. Again, the danger of in church. Our children need to be here. I'm okay with Sunday school class. I'm not bashing that again. But for the most part, our children are right here with us. Don't let Satan take them from you. They need to be right here. And we need to speak from up here in ways that they can understand. Modesty, simplicity, and dress. Satan's attacking that one. That's a danger that as a dad I have to address, and I have to teach my children what is modesty. Again, as dad, you're going to have to take that and look at it in your own life. What is modesty? What is simplicity? And it goes way beyond, does it cover? What does it say about you as a person? Why are you doing it? Again, you take it, you think about it. Here's another one that was brought to my mind that I'm thinking some about, and I don't have an answer. Where does this whole idea that young people are going to go through this in-between stage where they're not really a child and not really an adult? They're just going to kind of have this wild area in here where they're just going to be. Do you see that anywhere in this book? That one really hit me upside the head when I came across that thought. And again, I'm giving it to you. I think it's a danger that as dads we have to recognize. We need to grow them up so that as they come into what we like to term adolescence, where did that term come from? They need to come from children into adulthood, don't they? They're a young adult. I'm a young adult compared to some people, right? But why in the world do we give them this point and we make it known, hey, in this bracket here, young folks, you're just going to be kind of crazy? Well, what do you expect they're going to do? Really? Children are going to give you what you expect. And I really wonder with that, if that's not something that we played right into the hand of Satan in. Why can't we expect them? Sure, they're not full-grown adults. But why don't we expect them to be more that way? As I understand in the Jewish culture, 12, 13 years old, a boy is initiated into manhood. He's not considered an adolescent youth in between here. 12, 13, you're a man now. You imagine what difference I think that would make If we took our children at 12 and 13 and said, look, you're a man now. Time to grow up. I mean, have the rest of us grown up all the way yet? We're still all growing up. I don't know. It's something for you to think about, and I think it's a danger that Satan is using to get the young people out of church, to get the young people out of the kingdom of God, because ultimately that's what it does, right? I don't know. You think about it. What about biblical education? Whose job is it to educate your children? It's yours, Dad, as a father. Whether that's at home, whether that's in a Christian day school, private school, where they're taught the truth, that's your decision as a dad and mom. It's nobody else's. It's your job. And it's your child's education. You better be there beside it every step of the way, because it's your job. If the teacher's not getting the job done, it's not, in a sense, the teacher's fault. It's your fault, because you're the dad. Education is squarely on the dad's shoulders. Are we going to stand in the gap? Educate them. And by that, what are you worried about in your education? Diploma? College degrees behind your name? Again, I'm not bashing any of that. I'm just trying to get you to stop and think. Would you rather have a child at 18 that can go out and earn a good living with skills without a college degree versus a 25-year-old that has all the degrees behind his name, but he has no idea how to work a real job? I think it's a problem in America. And again, education is great. We don't want to be dumb people. We need to learn. But let's teach more than just the academics. And let's not be so focused on got to get that diploma, got to get that college degree, that we miss teaching them character and we miss teaching them skills of survival. And in all of this, men, remember, I'm not calling you to be a selfish, domineering, carrying a big stick kind of person. I'm not going to get into what manliness really looks like. You go, let the Spirit of God work on you with that. Because a manly man is not about me, and it's not about macho. It's about gentle, strong servanthood. And see, that's where it gets me every time. Servanthood. Because it means I got to let go of myself. I've got to put my wife and my children before anything else. But see, I'm to be a representative before them of what God is, right? So here's another thing for you to think about. How did God relate to the children of Israel? I think there's a big lesson in that for you as a dad. He provided for them. He led them. He taught them the truth. He set boundaries for them. As long as they stayed inside the boundary, they received a lot of blessing. When Israel stepped across that boundary, God's justice fell. Isn't that how it's supposed to be as a dad? I've got to set a wall. I've got to set a boundary. When that boundary's crossed, there's consequences. But there again, if I'm domineering and angry in the way I deal with that crossing the boundary, it's going to drastically affect the way my children are. We've got to break the cycle of pain in our children. This so often happens because as a dad, I react. And I deal out of my own selfishness and my own anger instead of simply being that wall and that watchman that I need to be. So dads, are you looking in the Word? And are you using that to look inside yourself to see your weaknesses? Are you using the Word to look around you and see the dangers that are impacting your family or that could impact them? Moms, are you standing beside your husband, being his helpmeet? And young people, especially young men, are you standing beside your dad, learning how to do life? See his weaknesses. Yes, they're going to be there. Stand beside your dad, and when you see his weakness, don't go, man, it ain't worth it. No, go, you know what? Look at everything Dad has going, He's got a weakness. You know what? I'm going to better that. And your dad will be okay with that if he's a real dad. Because as a dad, if we're going to be a real dad, we can stand there and go, son, you see that weakness? Fix it. Do better than I did. And again, I think that's a problem that so often as dads, why does that have to intimidate us? We should be happy if our children run miles past us. The fact is, you are a lot what you are because of your dad. And I had to think about that as I was doing some of this. And I give my dad a lot of credit for what I am today. A lot of my philosophy in life subconsciously comes from that. Learn from your dad. Take the good and run with it. Take the good and run with it. The last thing that we need is for God to look down and say, I looked for somebody to be the man. I looked for somebody to build a wall and stand in the gap, and I couldn't find anybody. I don't think that's what God is seeing when he looks down at us this morning. But I know for me, God is seeing a man that can do way better than he's done. And so I invite you to stand in the gap. Because if I stand in the gap and I build a wall, and Stephen's over here standing in his gap building his wall, and Ben's over here, Mike's over here, guess how big that wall is? Guess how many gaps are filled up? Across America, if we could have dads that would stand up and build that wall, guess what would change? Everything. And see, that's what God said. If my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked way, I will heal their land. You want to know why God isn't healing America? Can't tell you for sure, but I really wonder if dads would stand up, build that wall. So join me, build your wall, stand in the gap, be the man that God made you to be. Let's pray. Father God, would you bless us today with strength, with courage, with victory, with families full of your love, full of your joy, full of your peace. Father, that as we build this wall, as we stand in the gap, as we be a watchman and a leader for our families, Father, would you help us to do it with joy? Would you fill us with your Spirit, that your peace would overrule our lives, that as we relate to our wives and our children, Father, that we would be a good representation of you, and that you would continue to work in my life, work in my home, that you would help us to grow. Father, it's not about us. It's not about making a big statement for our family. It's about honoring and glorifying you, and that the world would see our family and go, wow, there's something different. And they would see the different. They would see you behind it, Father. They wouldn't see us. Father, I pray that you would bless us as a congregation, that we would build walls, we would stand in the gap, and that our community would be blessed because of us, and that our community would receive a call to do the same thing. Bless each father here today with your strength, with your grace, with your courage. Bless each mom, that she would have the courage to be a helpmeet, to fill her role, that it could be a team of much strength because of your infilling in each of them. And bless the young people, bless the children, Father, that together we could honor and glorify you.